Welcome back, troglodytes, to the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we have just about the prettiest Les Paul you'll ever see. This is a Korina Custom Shop Standard. So it's got an explosive top and it's made out of Korina instead of mahogany. So let's learn a little bit about this mythical Korina wood. As it comes to Gibson history, whenever you mention the word Korina, it gets collectors all tingly and players' mouths start to salivate. There is just something so mythical and mystical about Korina wood because of the guitars it was used on in the 50s. What guitars are those, you ask? Well, the original Explorer, Flying V, Moderne and Futura. Korina is often described as a super mahogany or mahogany deluxe wood. It has a similar wood grain pattern to mahogany, but many people say it's a little bit brighter tone-wise and has a sweeter mid-range. Another pro to Korina wood is it's usually lighter weight than mahogany. So if it's such a beautiful wood and people dig it, why doesn't Gibson do it more often? Well, that's due to quality and availability issues. Korina, also known as Limba wood, there's like white and black variants that I've found just from Gibson history, but it generally comes out of Africa, and from what I've read online is it's incredibly hard to source in large quantities for like guitar manufacturers. And since everybody wants to buy like the Korina Explorers and Vs, you need good large chunks to make those massive monsters. I mean, the Les Paul, yeah, it's not quite as hard because they're not as big. But there's problems within the wood itself. Apparently it dries really fast, and that can cause splitting, so that's why it's hard to find good large pieces. And this wood is very prone to staining once it is cut down. This is due to a fungus within those African jungles that feeds off of the sugar content in the wood. And after learning that, looking at this one, it's like, oh, that's what those little dark stains are. You can kind of see that a little bit right here, and especially on the edges right here. So that's fungus eating my guitar when it was cut down. It might just be a natural color variation too, I don't know. The trees are also very susceptible to termites and something called heartwood decay. I'm not sure if there was a Korina Les Paul standard in the 50s. I know Gibson created this monstrosity for the 50th anniversary reissue, but I'm really not sure what the history behind that design is. But here we have a custom shop Korina Les Paul. You know, for all the reasons that I just stated, these are usually very limited in production every year. After buying this one, I did a hunt to see how many other ones are out there. It seems like since the mid-90s through like the mid-2000s, Gibson would kick out, you know, anywhere between like 10 to 50 of these things per year. So are they rare? Yes, but they're definitely out there if you want one. And they usually have these really nice quilted tops. Now this particular top I think is extra fantastic because it has like these little eyes within it. It just comes to life in the light. There really isn't a dead angle on this one. Sometimes these will be built to like R8, R9 specs. This one, it's not necessarily one of those. But it is historically spec'd as far as the long neck tenon, the ABR1 bridge, and as a few of the other features go. But the only thing that like screams to me not historic is it has the wide binding in the cutaway instead of the thin binding. Notice how the maple cap is exposed on thin binding. And inside the control cavity, as we'll see later, there's no like R8, R9 stamp. But let's go ahead, throw this one on the workbench, and take an inside look. We have the original Gibson pickups in here. They simply just say patent applied for. That's styled after the original 50s Gibson PAFs. Now, that can actually mean a few different things depending on what era your guitar is, but I'm pretty sure these would be 57 classics. I might be wrong on that. Your bridge pickup position reads 7.94 k ohms, and your neck position reads 7.89. So they're a little bit overwound, so they'll have a little bit more of a hot, bitey tone to them. Inside the neck pickup cavity, you can see this is constructed with a historical long neck tenon, and you can see that beautiful Korina body matched with this absolutely uniquely quilted maple top here. The bridge pickup cavity doesn't really have anything that interesting going on. This guitar is constructed with an ABR1 bridge, which is another historical thing, is the ABR1 is drilled directly into the top, whereas the Nashville one uses a post that is put inside of the guitar. Why many people prefer the ABR1 is they think that gives you better tone and sustain since it's directly into the wood. Which, if you think about it, yeah, that definitely sounds plausible. It would be an interesting test if you could compare that on one guitar though. But you can see it is labeled Gibson ABR1. And the screws face this way for those. The tailpiece and the rest of the hardware is nickel on this one. That's also another historic attribute. This is a beautifully dark rosewood fretboard on here, and you can see the inlays are more pointed here. The vintage bursts, theirs are a little bit more rounded around the edges, but this is kind of how the historic inlays will look. Underneath the truss rod cover, you can see this one's definitely been adjusted. It's got plenty of time left before needing reset, but the threads are just slightly past the top of the nut. And you can see you have your Les Paul model silkscreen with the Gibson mother of pearl logo. And these little finish checking lines, that's how you know it's a real Gibson, because if they weren't there, that's when you would be suspicious. That's just kind of part of how they inlaid those. Now inside the back control plate here, you have two Gibson branded pots, and then you have your normal CTS styled ones that date to the 51st week of 1997. So it's possible these two might be replacements. Or maybe this is around the time when they switched from using this style to that and they were using leftover parts. I'm not really sure when the Gibson branded pots came out. Here's what the toggle plate control cavity looks like. But with these being very late 1997 pots, it kind of matches the story of the serial number here. It's a Gibson custom shop creation, but this 8 will then stand for 1998. And I'm not really sure what those numbers are because it changes for like every single model. Like when it comes down to like the prehistoric guitars, I mean, you could find this on a 1988 Les Paul as well, and that would mean it was the 9,000th one made. But sometimes with limited runs like these, they'll just have that for the year. They'll just choose a random number for the run. So this might be like the 35th one made in the 1998 run, but it's hard to really narrow stuff down like that. But you can see the Gibson Kluson Deluxe style tuners here as well. This one has a traditional 1.7 inch nut width. And this guy has a really fat neck. Just at the first fret, it's 0.96 inches. By the time you're at the 12th fret, it's up to a full inch and has a 2 7/100 inch neck width. This is always tough to visualize, but it's a really fat, rounded neck profile here. And another nice thing about this one is it's really lightweight, just a little over 8 pounds at 8 pounds 4.7 ounces. And look at that top again. This guitar is crazy, guys. So overall, is a Korina Les Paul worth buying? I think this is mainly a collector's instrument on this one. They're absolutely beautiful. It plays and sounds great, as you'll hear here in a minute. But the price on these, yeah, usually way too high. Most players would probably go for something else. But absolutely beautiful guitar if you're looking for something a little bit different. So now that we've learned about this guitar, let's go ahead and hear how it sounds. Now that we know how this guitar sounds, let's go ahead and review its condition. Somebody took really good care of this thing. You can see on the face of the headstock, you might have a few light scratches. You've got the lacquer cracking around the Gibson logo, as is common due to how they do the inlay of that, but nothing like too major on the face of the headstock. The frets, as you saw in that inside look, are definitely in great shape, little to no wear, and it plays smoothly up and down the neck. The inlays do have a slight greened tint to them, kind of like the Les Paul Classics. Face of the guitar, you've got some very minor picking scratches. I don't see any like major nicks or dings here though. It's definitely in pretty good shape here with that, once again, explosive 2-piece maple top on this one. The only like major wear on this guitar seems to be allocated to the pickup covers. You can see they're worn. They're not just dirty. I can't tell you how many times I've tried polishing that stuff off. I think it's just kind of the nickel hardware being worn off due to somebody's hand just being on it, then being put in the case, not being wiped down, and it just kind of ate it a little bit. But, you know, just pop the covers off those puppies, put brand new nickel ones on. It would look perfectly fine. You've got some similar tarnishing to the tailpiece as well. I guess something else to mention, if you get it in the light just right, there's a little bit of like the orange peel effect, people will call it, where it looks like the texture of the outside of an orange. Now when you go to feel it, I mean, it feels smooth, but you can kind of tell it, so that might be, hey, not so good on Gibson, but I don't think it detracts from any of the beauty of this guitar. It's not overly present. Back of the headstock, serial number 89935. You have your Gibson Custom Shop decal on the back of the headstock. Sides of the headstock are looking in good shape. I don't see like any dings against the ceiling that sometimes you'll do on collector's instruments like these. That one's looking good. The bass side of the nut, the lacquer's still covering it, but on the treble side, the lacquer has chipped a little bit on the nut, but I don't see any like finish checking marks there, which is nice. Super fat neck profile, super rounded, very R7-like based on what I've had. Super big. So if you don't like fat rounded necks, don't buy this guitar. Backside of the instrument here, I'll get it in the light. You can see like very faint marks, but I would not say that this thing was ever heavily played. You've got some very minor play wear. I'm not going to say this is mint condition because I don't believe anything truly is mint, not even brand new guitars. Next to the pickup covers, the next worst area is right here in the cutaway. It's always hard to visualize this, but there's a little finish crack that goes from here and then it just kind of stems down. Is it in the wood? No, strictly in the finish. That's just kind of how it happens sometimes. It's very common to see around this area. And then it kind of continues into this cutaway, but I'll throw some photos up here that give you a better close-up of that. But that's the only finish checking that I see on this guitar, but we'll do a nice slow look here. And I think this is what I love most about this guitar. Sure, the top is absolutely explosive, and the back Korina is nice and like dancing and beautiful, but it's the sides of this instrument that make it spectacular in comparison to the other ones on the market. You have a lot of this wood grain going on, and that's what gets me excited, especially down here. Look at all this waviness. You can see more of that dark staining in the wood as well. So that's what makes me very appreciative that I found this one. I've never necessarily been looking for a Korina Les Paul, but this one kind of fell into my lap, and I'm so happy I've been able to document it. Let's go ahead and take a look under Blacklight. This is a fairly boring Blacklight guitar because, well, there's not much to show. It was a collector's guitar. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Maybe the knobs have been replaced. They glow a little bit, so full disclosure, we'll just say they've been replaced. But everything else is looking good on this guitar. Here you can see those finished check lines again. And the rest of the sides of the instrument. No touch-ups, refinishes, or anything. That's what the Blacklight test is looking for here. It can also help visualize some of the other scratches and other marks, but there's really not much on this guitar. I'm sure most dealers would consider this mint condition, but very good is the highest rating I ever give to anything. So beautiful example here. This instrument comes in a Gibson Custom Art Historic case, most likely original to the guitar. You've got the 4 latches on the front, one does have a key lock, and there's also one on the back. You've got some minor scuffs and scrapes, but you know, for the most part, this thing's actually in pretty darn good shape. The interior is that nice dark burgundy color, very similar to modern day custom shop cases if you've ever had one of those. Good heel support, double neck rest, no headstock wedge. Everything is good on this one. Inside your compartment, you do have some case candy. It's not a lot, but better than nothing. You have the Gibson Custom Art Historic little tag, the original truss rod tool, silica packet, and the warranty information, which is filled out, and it reads October 21st of 1998. It's just listed as a custom shop Les Paul standard. So, nice little piece of case candy there. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this Korina Les Paul from 1998, feel free to check out that link in the description that will take you to the Reverb for sale ad. Thank you, Troglodytes, for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.